The blizzard hit Lordsburg, New Mexico, without warning on the first day of February 1885, transforming the dusty frontier town into a white nightmare that nobody had seen coming. Benjamin Sawyer pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders as he rode through the howling wind, cursing himself for not turning back an hour ago when the first flakes started falling. He had been checking on his cattle in the northern pasture when the storm descended like a vengeful spirit, and now he could barely see 3 feet in front of his horse's nose. The temperature had dropped so fast that ice crystals formed on his mustache, and his fingers felt like wooden blocks inside his gloves. Benjamin was 26 years old, tall and broad-shouldered from years of ranch work, with dark hair that fell past his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds. He had been working his family's ranch since his father died 3 years back, and he knew every inch of this territory like the back of his hand. But this storm was different, unnatural for southern New Mexico, where snow was rare and blizzards were practically unheard of. The weather had been strange all winter, with temperatures swinging wildly and storms blowing in from directions that made no sense. His horse whinnied nervously as they pushed forward through drifts that were already knee-high. Benjamin patted the animal's neck reassuringly, though he felt far from reassured himself. He needed to find shelter soon, or they would both freeze to death out here. The ranch was still 5 miles south, too far to make it in these conditions. He scanned the white landscape, trying to remember what landmarks were nearby. Then he saw it, barely visible through the swirling snow. An old line shack that he had passed 100 times but never given much thought. It had been abandoned years ago when the previous owner of the adjacent property went bust and moved east. Benjamin urged his horse toward the dark shape, hoping the roof was still intact. The wind fought him every step, trying to push him back, but he pressed on with grim determination. When he finally reached the shack, he dismounted and led his horse around to the leeward side, where a lean-to offered some protection. His hands shook as he unsaddled the animal and rubbed it down as best he could with handfuls of dry snow to prevent freezing sweat. The horse would be cold, but it would survive. Benjamin grabbed his saddlebags and rifle, then pushed his way around the front door. The door hung crooked on broken hinges, and he had to shove hard to get it open against the snow that had drifted against it. The interior was dark and smelled of dust and old wood, but it was blessedly out of the wind. Benjamin stomped his boots and was about to close the door when he heard something that made his blood run cold. A whimper, soft and weak, barely audible over the storm. His hand went to his pistol as he peered into the gloom. Could be an animal, a coyote, or a wounded deer. But something about the sound was distinctly human. He pulled out a match and struck it against the doorframe, holding the flickering light high. In the corner, huddled against the wall like a pile of rags, was a woman. Benjamin crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees beside her. She was curled in on herself, her lips blue, her skin pale as death. Her dark hair was matted with snow and ice, and her clothes, a thin calico dress and a worn shawl, were completely inadequate for the weather. She must have been caught in the storm just like he was, but she had no horse, no supplies, nothing. "Madam," he said urgently, touching her shoulder. She was so cold that he could feel it through his gloves. "Madam, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. Another weak sound escaped her throat. She was alive, but barely. If he did not get her warm soon, she would die. Benjamin's mind raced through his options. He needed a fire, blankets, warmth. He looked around the shack and saw an old potbelly stove in the corner, rusty but intact. There were broken pieces of furniture scattered around, dry wood that would burn. It would have to do. He moved with swift efficiency, years of ranch work having taught him to act decisively in emergencies. First, he checked the stove's chimney by looking up through the pipe. It seemed clear enough. He gathered the broken chair legs and pieces of an old table, stacking them in the stove. From his saddlebags, he pulled out a small bundle of kindling he always carried and some old newspaper. Within minutes, he had a fire crackling in the stove. The warmth spread slowly through the cold room, but it was not enough. The woman needed more direct heat. Benjamin pulled out his bedroll and spread it on the floor near the stove. Then he carefully lifted the woman in his arms. She weighed almost nothing, light as a bird, and she did not stir as he moved her. Her head lolled against his chest, and he could barely feel her breathing. He laid her on the bedroll and began removing her wet clothes. His hands worked quickly but respectfully, peeling away the frozen shawl and the damp dress underneath. She wore a thin chemise and petticoat beneath, both soaked through. He hesitated only a moment before removing those too. Modesty was a luxury neither of them could afford right now. He had seen women before, had been engaged once to a girl named Sarah who died of cholera, and he knew that hypothermia killed without mercy. Once she was stripped of the wet clothing, he wrapped her in his spare blanket and then in his coat. Her skin was like ice, and he could see her shivering, though she still had not regained consciousness. He knew from experience with cattle and horses that had gotten caught in cold snaps that warming had to be done carefully and thoroughly. Benjamin fed more wood into the stove, building the fire higher. Then he sat down beside the woman and pulled her against his chest, wrapping his arms around her and sharing his body heat. It was the best he could do. He held her close, rubbing her arms and back through the blanket, trying to stimulate circulation. The wind howled outside, rattling the walls of the shack and sending drafts through gaps in the boards. Snow blew in under the door, creating a small drift just inside the entrance. Benjamin kept his focus on the woman in his arms, monitoring her breathing, checking her pulse at her neck. It was weak but steady. "Come on," he murmured. "Stay with me. You're going to be all right." He had no idea who she was or how she had ended up in this abandoned shack with no supplies and no horse. It did not make sense. Lordsburg was 10 miles south, and there were no settlements nearby. Had she been traveling and gotten lost, been thrown from a wagon, run away from something? As the minutes stretched into an hour, Benjamin continued his vigil. He kept the fire burning, kept her wrapped against him, kept rubbing warmth back into her limbs. His own exhaustion tugged at him, but he fought it off. If he fell asleep and the fire went out, they would both die. Slowly, gradually, he felt her body temperature rising. The deathly pallor began to fade from her cheeks, replaced by a faint pink flush. Her breathing deepened and became more regular. The violent shivers that had racked her frame eased into gentler tremors. Then, after what felt like an eternity, her eyelids fluttered open. Benjamin found himself looking into the most remarkable eyes he had ever seen. They were green, the deep green of pine trees, with flecks of gold near the pupils. For a moment, she just stared at him in confusion, her gaze unfocused. Then awareness flooded in, and she gasped, trying to pull away. "Easy," Benjamin said quickly, keeping his hold gentle but firm. "You are safe. You were freezing to death. I found you in this shack." She blinked at him, her lips moving as if trying to form words. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse and barely audible. "Where?" "An old line shack about 5 miles north of my ranch. There is a blizzard outside. We are stuck here until it passes." She looked down at herself, seeming to realize for the first time that she was wrapped in blankets with very little underneath. Her cheeks flushed deeper, and she clutched the blanket tighter. "My clothes were soaking wet. I had to remove them, or you would have died. They are drying by the fire." He nodded toward where her dress and undergarments hung from a piece of wire he had strung near the stove. She absorbed this information slowly, as if her mind was still struggling to function properly. "Who are you?" "Benjamin Sawyer. I own a ranch south of here. I got caught in the storm and took shelter. Lucky I did, or I never would have found you." He studied her face, taking in the delicate features, the dark hair that fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, the haunted look in those green eyes. "What is your name?" She hesitated, and he saw fear flicker across her face. "Rose," she finally said. "Rose Fairfield." "Well, Miss Fairfield, you are one lucky woman to be alive. How did you end up out here with no horse and no supplies?" The fear in her eyes intensified, and she looked away. "I was traveling. There was an accident. My horse bolted. I got lost trying to find the road and saw this shack." Benjamin heard the lie in her voice, but he did not press. Whatever had brought her out here, whatever she was running from, it had nearly killed her. She would tell him when she was ready, or she would not. Right now, keeping her alive was all that mattered. "Are you warm enough now?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes. Thank you. You saved my life. Not out of danger yet. This storm could last all night, maybe into tomorrow. We need to conserve our wood and stay warm." He carefully released her and moved to check the fire, adding another piece of broken furniture. The flames leaped higher, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Rose pulled the blanket tighter around herself and sat up, wincing as if every movement hurt. Benjamin could see bruises on her arms, dark purple marks that looked like fingerprints. Someone had grabbed her, hard. His jaw tightened, but he kept his expression neutral. "Are you injured anywhere else?" he asked. "Besides the cold, I mean." She shook her head quickly. "No, just bruises. I will be fine." Another lie, but Benjamin let it pass. He opened his saddlebags and pulled out some jerky and hardtack. It was not much, but it would keep them going. He offered her a piece of jerky. "You should eat something. Get your strength back." Rose took it with trembling hands and nibbled at it carefully, as if she had not eaten in days. Benjamin watched her, his curiosity growing. She was young, probably no more than 22 or 23, with the kind of refined features that suggested she had not been born to frontier life. Her hands, though work-worn, were small and graceful. She spoke without the rough accent of ranch folk or the drawl of Texas immigrants. She was educated, he could tell. "Where were you headed?" he asked, sitting down across from her and taking a bite of his own jerky. "West," she said vaguely. "California, eventually." "Long way from here. Were you traveling alone?" She hesitated again, that flicker of fear returning. "No, there were others, but we got separated in the storm." Benjamin did not believe her, but he nodded as if he did. This storm came out of nowhere. Never seen weather like this in February, not in New Mexico. More like something you would get up in the mountains of Colorado. "It is unusual," she agreed softly. They sat in silence for a while, eating their meager meal and listening to the wind rage outside. The shack creaked and groaned, but it held firm. The fire crackled warmly, filling the small space with flickering light. Despite the circumstances, there was something almost peaceful about the moment. Two strangers huddled against the cold, sharing warmth and shelter. Benjamin found himself studying Rose when she was not looking. There was something about her that tugged at him, a vulnerability mixed with a fierce determination. She was clearly running from something, probably something bad, and every instinct he had told him to help her. But he also knew better than to get involved in other people's troubles. The frontier was full of people with pasts they did not want to discuss, and most folks learned to mind their own business. Still, he could not shake the image of those bruises on her arms, or the way her eyes darted to the door every time the wind made a particularly loud sound. "You can tell me, you know," he said quietly. "If someone hurt you, if you were running." Rose's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "I do not know what you mean. Those bruises on your arms, the way you jumped when I mentioned the storm separating you from your companions, the fact that you are out here in the middle of nowhere with no supplies." He kept his voice gentle, non-threatening. "I am not going to judge you, Miss Fairfield, and I am not going to hurt you, but if someone is after you, I should know about it." For a long moment she just stared at him, her green eyes searching his face, as if trying to determine whether she could trust him. Then, slowly, her shoulders sagged and tears welled up in her eyes. "My husband," she whispered. "My husband hurt me." Benjamin felt a cold anger settle in his gut. "You are married?" She shook her head quickly. "Not anymore. I mean, legally yes, but I left him. I ran away 3 days ago from El Paso. He is a wealthy man, owns several businesses. Everyone thinks he is wonderful, respectable, but behind closed doors, he is a monster." Her voice broke, and tears spilled down her cheeks. "He used to hit me when he was angry. At first, it was just once in a while, but it got worse. Last week, he nearly killed me. I knew if I stayed, he would." "So you ran," Benjamin said. "I took what little money I could and bought a stagecoach ticket to Lordsburg. From there, I was going to head north to Albuquerque and then west. But when I got to Lordsburg yesterday, I saw one of his men in the saloon. He must have sent people out looking for me." She wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "I panicked and ran. I stole a horse from behind the livery and rode north, but I do not know how to ride well. When the storm started, the horse got spooked and threw me. It ran off, and I started walking. I saw this shack and came inside. I thought I could wait out the storm, but it got so cold, and I had not eaten, and I just felt myself getting weaker and weaker." Benjamin listened to her story with a growing sense of protectiveness. He had always hated men who hurt women, had seen too many wives and daughters bearing the marks of a violent husband or father. It was one thing to be tough in a tough land, but there was no excuse for taking your anger out on someone weaker than you. "What is your husband's name?" he asked. "Marcus Fairfield. He owns the Fairfield Trading Company in El Paso. He has connections, money, influence. If he finds me, he will drag me back, and this time he will make sure I never leave again." She looked at Benjamin with desperate eyes. "You cannot tell anyone you saw me. Please. If word gets back to him that I was here, he will come for me." "I am not going to tell anyone," Benjamin assured her, "and I am not going to let him hurt you again. You do not understand. He is powerful. He can make things very difficult for you if you interfere. I do not scare easy, Miss Fairfield." Benjamin fed another piece of wood into the stove. "And I do not hold with men who beat women. You are under my protection now, at least until we can figure out a safe place for you to go." Rose looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief, as if she could not quite believe that a stranger would help her without expecting something in return. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." "Because it is the right thing to do," Benjamin said simply. "My mother raised me to believe that a man's worth is measured by how he treats those who cannot defend themselves. You were in trouble, and I found you. That makes you my responsibility." Fresh tears spilled down Rose's cheeks, but these were different. Tears of relief rather than fear. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." Benjamin felt something shift in his chest as he looked at her, something warm and unfamiliar. He told himself it was just sympathy, just the natural response to helping someone in need. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something about Rose Fairfield, something that called to him on a level he did not quite understand. The wind continued to howl outside as the night deepened. Benjamin kept the fire burning, rationing their wood carefully. He gave Rose his bedroll to sleep on and sat with his back against the wall, his rifle across his lap, keeping watch. She protested, saying he needed to rest too, but he insisted. The truth was, he did not think he could sleep anyway. His mind was too full of thoughts, too aware of the woman sleeping just a few feet away. Rose drifted off eventually, exhausted by her ordeal. Benjamin watched the firelight play across her face, softening her features. She was beautiful, he realized, though it was a beauty marred by suffering. He wondered what she had looked like before Marcus Fairfield got his hands on her, before fear and pain had etched themselves into the lines around her eyes. As the hours passed, Benjamin found himself making plans. He could not just send Rose on her way with a bit of food and wish her luck. She had no horse, no supplies, and a violent husband hunting for her. She needed somewhere safe to stay, somewhere Marcus Fairfield could not reach her. The problem was, El Paso was not that far away, and men with money and connections had long arms. Maybe he could take her to his ranch, at least temporarily. She could stay in the spare room, the one that had been his mother's before she passed 2 years ago. His ranch hands were good men, loyal, and they would not talk if he asked them not to. It would give Rose time to rest, to heal, to figure out her next move. But even as he thought it, Benjamin knew there was a risk. If Marcus Fairfield came looking and found Rose at the Sawyer ranch, there would be trouble. Benjamin was not afraid of trouble, but he had to think of his hands, his cattle, his livelihood. Starting a war with a wealthy businessman was not smart. On the other hand, turning Rose away was not an option. He could not live with himself if he sent her off alone and something happened to her. The storm finally began to ease around midnight. The wind died down to a low moan, and the snow stopped falling. Benjamin stood and looked out through a gap in the boards. The world outside was transformed, buried under at least 2 feet of snow. It would be hard going in the morning, but they could make it back to his ranch. He turned back to check on Rose and found her awake, watching him with those haunting green eyes. "Cannot sleep?" he asked softly. "I keep having nightmares," she admitted. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him." Benjamin crossed the room and sat down near her, close enough to offer comfort, but not so close as to make her uncomfortable. "You are safe here. I promise you that." "I know," she said, and he could hear the sincerity in her voice. "You have been so kind to me. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not owe me anything, Miss Fairfield." "Rose," she corrected. "Please, just call me Rose." "Rose," he repeated, liking the way the name felt on his tongue. "I have been thinking. When the storm clears tomorrow, I will take you back to my ranch. You can stay there for a while, get your strength back, figure out where you want to go." She sat up, clutching the blanket around her. "I could not impose like that. You have already done so much." "It is not an imposition. I have plenty of room, and my ranch hands are good men. You will be safe there. But what about Marcus? If he finds out I am there, he will come for me. Then we will deal with him when he comes, Benjamin said firmly. But I am not going to leave you out here to fend for yourself. That is not happening. Rose looked at him for a long moment, her eyes shining with emotion. Then, to his surprise, she reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were small and warm in his, and he felt a jolt of electricity at the contact. You are a good man, Benjamin Sawyer, she said quietly. The world needs more men like you. Benjamin felt his face warm. I am just doing what anyone would do. No, Rose said firmly. Most men would not have stopped. Most men would not have cared. You risked your life in that storm, and now you are risking your reputation and your safety to help me. That is not nothing. They sat together in the firelight, hands clasped, and Benjamin felt something fundamental shift between them. It was not attraction exactly, though he could not deny that she was beautiful. It was something deeper, a connection that went beyond physical appearance. He felt as if he could see into her soul, could feel the strength and courage it had taken for her to leave a violent husband and strike out on her own. She was not a victim, he realized. She was a survivor. Tell me about your ranch, Rose said after a while, as if sensing that they both needed to talk about something normal, something that was not fear and survival. It is called the Double S, Benjamin said, grateful for the change of subject. About 2,000 acres, mostly cattle with some horses. My father started it 30 years ago, when he came out from Missouri. It was just him and my mother at first, living in a 2-room cabin and fighting off Apache raids and drought and everything else this land could throw at them. They built it up slowly, year by year, until it was one of the biggest ranches in the territory. It sounds wonderful, Rose said wistfully. I grew up in St. Louis. My father was a banker. Everything was so proper, so constrained. I always dreamed of seeing the West, of having adventures. She laughed bitterly. I suppose I got my wish, though not quite the way I imagined. How did you end up married to Marcus Fairfield? Benjamin asked. Rose's expression darkened. My father arranged it. He and Marcus did business together, and when Marcus expressed interest in me, my father was thrilled. Marcus was wealthy, successful, 15 years older, but still considered a good catch. I was 19 and stupid enough to believe that marriage would give me freedom. My father made it clear that I did not have a choice, so I went along with it. Your father pushed you to marry a man like that? My father did not know what Marcus was like, Rose said quietly. No one did. Marcus was always charming in public, generous and kind. It was only after we were married that I saw the real him. By then, it was too late. How long were you married? 3.5 years. 3.5 years of hell. She shuddered. I tried to leave once before, about a year ago. I made it as far as Tucson before one of his men found me and dragged me back. Marcus locked me in our bedroom for a week after that, told everyone I was ill. When he finally let me out, he made sure I understood what would happen if I tried to leave again. Benjamin felt his anger rising again. He had no right to treat you that way. No matter what the law says, marriage does not give a man the right to hurt his wife. Most people do not see it that way, Rose said. A wife is her husband's property. That is how the law views it, how most people view it. I had no money of my own, no way to support myself. I was trapped. Not anymore, Benjamin said firmly. You got away. You are free. Am I? Rose looked at him with sad eyes. I will never be truly free as long as Marcus is alive and looking for me. He will never give up. It is not about love or even really about me. It is about control. He cannot stand the idea that I defied him. Then we will make sure he does not find you, Benjamin said. I do not know how yet, but we will figure something out. They talked through the rest of the night, sharing stories about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Benjamin told her about growing up on the ranch, about learning to rope and ride before he could read, about the year the drought nearly destroyed them, and how his father kept going through sheer stubbornness. Rose told him about her childhood in St. Louis, about sneaking books from her father's library and dreaming of faraway places, about the mother who died when she was 12 and left her alone with a cold, distant father who saw her only as a bargaining chip. As the sky began to lighten outside, Benjamin realized that he had talked more in one night than he usually did in a month. There was something about Rose that made him want to open up, to share parts of himself he usually kept locked away. And she seemed to feel the same way, her words flowing freely as if a dam had broken inside her. When dawn finally came, they prepared to leave. Rose's clothes were dry, but wrinkled and thin. Benjamin gave her his spare shirt to wear under her dress for extra warmth, and she accepted it gratefully. They packed up what little they had, and Benjamin saddled his horse. The world outside was a winter wonderland, beautiful and deadly. The snow had stopped, but the temperature was still well below freezing. Benjamin helped Rose onto his horse, then mounted behind her. She fit perfectly against his chest, and he tried not to think about how right it felt to hold her. The ride back to the ranch took 3 hours instead of the usual one. The horse struggled through the deep snow, and they had to stop several times to rest. Benjamin kept his arms around Rose, sharing his warmth, and she leaned back against him trustingly. When they finally topped the rise and the ranch came into view, Benjamin felt a surge of relief. The buildings looked solid and secure, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney. His men had weathered the storm just fine. As they rode into the yard, 3 of his ranch hands came out of the bunkhouse. Tom Murphy, his foreman, a grizzled man in his 50s with a weathered face and sharp eyes. Jake Wilson, barely 20 but strong as an ox and loyal as they came. And old Charlie Santos, who had worked for Benjamin's father for 30 years. Tom's eyebrows shot up when he saw Rose, but to his credit, he did not ask questions. "Boss, we were worried about you. Thought you might have gotten caught in the storm." "I did," Benjamin said, dismounting and then helping Rose down. "Found Miss Fairfield here in the old Henderson shack, half frozen. She's going to be staying with us for a while." Tom nodded slowly, his eyes taking in Rose's battered appearance and the way she stood close to Benjamin as if seeking protection. "Understood, boss. We will keep it quiet." "I appreciate that, Tom." Benjamin turned to Rose. "Come on, let us get you inside and warmed up properly." He led her to the main house, a sturdy structure his father had built 20 years ago. It was not fancy, but it was well made and comfortable, with 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a sitting room with a stone fireplace. Benjamin had been living here alone since his mother died, and the house felt too big and too empty most of the time. He showed Rose to his mother's old room. It had a bed with a real mattress, a wardrobe, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the southern pastures. The room smelled a bit musty from disuse, but it was clean. "This is yours for as long as you need it," Benjamin said. "I will have Jake bring in some water so you can wash up. There should be some of my mother's old clothes in the wardrobe. She was about your size." Rose looked around the room with wonder, tears in her eyes. "It is beautiful. Thank you, Benjamin, for everything." "You are welcome." He hesitated at the door, wanting to say more but not sure what. "I will be in the kitchen if you need anything. Come on out when you're ready, and I will make us some breakfast." He left her alone to settle in and went to the kitchen. His hands moved automatically as he built up the fire in the cook stove and started preparing food. Bacon, eggs, biscuits, coffee. Simple fare, but hearty. As he cooked, his mind raced with thoughts of Rose, of the situation he had gotten himself into, of what would happen next. He was attracted to her. He could not deny that. But more than attraction, he felt a deep need to protect her, to keep her safe from the man who had hurt her. It was a feeling unlike anything he had experienced before, not even with Sarah. Sarah. He had not thought about her in months. Their engagement had been brief, more of a practical arrangement between 2 families than a grand romance. When she died, he had grieved, but it had been the grief of losing a friend rather than a lover. What he felt for Rose after just one night was already more intense than anything he had felt for Sarah in a year of courtship. It made no sense. He barely knew her, but something about the way she looked at him, the way she had trusted him with her story, the way she felt in his arms, all of it added up to something powerful and undeniable. Rose emerged from the bedroom about half an hour later, wearing one of his mother's old dresses, a simple blue cotton that brought out the green in her eyes. She had washed her face and braided her hair, and she looked years younger, almost girlish. "That smells wonderful," she said, eyeing the food on the table. "Sit down," Benjamin said, pulling out a chair for her. "You need to eat." They ate in comfortable silence, both of them hungry after their ordeal. Rose ate with delicate precision, but Benjamin noticed she cleaned her plate. Good. She needed to build up her strength. After breakfast, Benjamin showed her around the ranch. The barn, the bunkhouse, the chicken coop, the corral where his horses milled about in the snow. Rose seemed fascinated by everything, asking questions about the animals and the land. She told him she had never been on a working ranch before, and her enthusiasm was infectious. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Benjamin went about his work, checking on the cattle, repairing storm damage, making sure his herd had enough feed. Rose helped where she could, cooking meals, mending clothes, even learning to gather eggs from the chickens. She was a quick learner, adapting to ranch life with surprising ease, and every evening after the work was done, they would sit by the fire and talk. They talked about everything and nothing, their conversations ranging from philosophy to favorite foods to dreams for the future. Benjamin found himself looking forward to these evenings more than anything else, found himself working faster during the day so he could get back to the house and see her. His hands noticed the change in him, but said nothing. Tom just gave him knowing looks, and Jake grinned whenever Rose was around. Charlie, the oldest and wisest of them, pulled Benjamin aside one morning and said, "That is a good woman you got there, boss. Be ashamed to let her get away." Benjamin did not bother to deny it. "She is not mine, Charlie. She is just staying here until she figures out where she wants to go." Charlie snorted. "If you say so, boss, but I have been around a long time, and I know what I'm seeing. You two look at each other like the world stops when you are in the same room. That is not just friendship." Benjamin knew Charlie was right, but he also knew it was complicated. Rose was still legally married, still being hunted by her husband, even if she felt the same way Benjamin did, and he was not sure she did. There was no future for them, as long as Marcus Fairfield was in the picture. 2 weeks after the storm, their fragile peace was shattered. Benjamin was in the barn repairing a saddle when Tom came running in, his face grim. "Boss, we got company. 4 men, well-armed, asking about a woman." Benjamin's blood ran cold. "Did they say what woman?" "Describe Miss Fairfield down to the mole on her left cheek. Said they were hired by her husband to bring her home." "Where are they now?" "At the end of the drive. I told them to wait there while I came to get you." Benjamin stood, his mind racing. He could lie, say he had not seen Rose, but if they had tracked her here, they probably had proof, and if he refused to cooperate, they might try to take her by force. He needed to talk to Rose. He found her in the kitchen, kneading dough for bread. She looked up with a smile when he entered, but the smile died when she saw his expression. "They are here, are they not?" she whispered. "Marcus's men. 4 of them at the end of the drive. Tom is keeping them there for now." Benjamin took her hands, flour and all. "I am not going to let them take you, Rose, but I need to know what you want me to do." Rose's face had gone pale, but her voice was steady. "I will not go back. I would rather die than go back to him." "It is not going to come to that," Benjamin said firmly. "But I need to handle this smart. If I just refuse to hand you over, they might come back with more men, maybe with the law. Your husband has money and influence." "So what do we do?" Benjamin thought quickly. "We play for time. I will go talk to them, see what they know, what they want. Meanwhile, you pack your things. If this goes bad, I will have Jake take you north to Albuquerque. You can catch a train there, head to California, like you planned." "Benjamin, I cannot let you fight my battles for me. You have already done so much." "This is not just your battle anymore," Benjamin said, surprised by the intensity in his own voice. "You are under my protection, and I do not give up on people under my protection." Rose looked at him with shining eyes, and for a moment, Benjamin thought she might cry. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him on the cheek, soft and quick. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Benjamin felt his face flush, but there was no time to dwell on it. He released her hands and went to his bedroom, where he kept his gun belt. He strapped it on, checking that his Colt was loaded. Then he grabbed his rifle and headed outside. The 4 men waiting at the end of the drive looked exactly like what they were, hired guns. Hard-faced men with cold eyes and well-worn pistols. The one in front, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, seemed to be the leader. "You Benjamin Sawyer?" the man called out as Benjamin approached. "I am, and you are?" "Name is Pike. We are working for Marcus Fairfield out of El Paso, looking for his wife. We got word she passed through Lordsburg a few weeks back, and we have been tracking her since. Trail leads here." "That so?" Benjamin kept his expression neutral. "What makes you think she is here?" Livery owner in Lordsburg remembered a woman matching her description stealing a horse. Horse was found about a mile from here, near an old line shack. Figured she holed up there during the storm, and you probably found her when the weather cleared. Pike's smile was unpleasant. We just want to talk to her, make sure she is all right. Her husband is real worried. I bet he is, Benjamin said dryly. And if I did find a woman in that shack, what makes you think she would want to go back to a husband who beats her? Pike's expression did not change. Do not know what you are talking about, friend. Mr. Fairfield is a respected businessman. His wife is confused, not thinking straight. She needs to come home where she belongs. Maybe she does not want to belong to anyone, Benjamin said. That is not really your concern, is it? Pike's voice hardened. Now, we can do this easy or hard. You hand over Mrs. Fairfield, we pay you for your trouble, and we all go our separate ways. Or we can make this difficult, and trust me, you do not want that. Benjamin felt his anger rising but kept it in check. Losing his temper would not help Rose. I think you should leave my property. Now. Pike sighed as if disappointed. See, that is the hard way. Mr. Fairfield is a powerful man. He has friends in high places, including the territorial governor. He can make a lot of trouble for you, Sawyer. Your ranch, your men, your reputation, all of it can disappear real fast if you cross him. That sounds like a threat. That is a promise. Pike leaned forward in his saddle. Be smart. Give us the woman, take your money, and forget any of this ever happened. Benjamin thought about Rose, about the bruises on her arms, about the fear in her eyes when she talked about her husband. He thought about his father, who had taught him that a man stands up for what is right even when it is hard. He thought about his own conscience, and he knew he could not live with himself if he handed Rose over to these men. Get off my land, he said quietly, and tell Marcus Fairfield that if he wants his wife back, he is going to have to go through me. Pike's face darkened. You are making a big mistake, Sawyer. Maybe, but it is my mistake to make. For a tense moment, Benjamin thought Pike might go for his gun. His hand tightened on his rifle, ready. But then Pike seemed to reconsider. He was being paid to retrieve a woman, not to start a shooting war. All right, Pike said. We will go, but this is not over. Mr. Fairfield will hear about this, and he will not be happy. You have made an enemy today, Sawyer. I will sleep just fine tonight, Benjamin said. Pike wheeled his horse around, and the four men rode off, leaving Benjamin standing at the end of his drive, adrenaline still pumping through his veins. He watched until they were out of sight, then hurried back to the house. Rose was waiting in the kitchen, her face anxious. What happened? I sent them away, but they will be back, probably with more men or with the law. Benjamin took off his gun belt and hung it by the door. We bought ourselves some time, but not much. I should leave, Rose said immediately. I cannot let you risk everything for me. This is my problem, not yours. Rose. Benjamin crossed the room and took her by the shoulders, making her look at him. Listen to me. I am not letting you run, not anymore. We are going to figure this out together. But how? Marcus has money, influence, the law on his side. I am his wife, legally his property. If he gets a court order, you will have to hand me over. Not if you are not his wife anymore, Benjamin said slowly, an idea forming in his mind. Rose blinked. What do you mean? Divorce. You could divorce him. On what grounds? The courts do not care if a husband hits his wife. That is considered his right. Abandonment, then? You left him. If you stay away long enough, you could petition for divorce based on that. Rose shook her head. That takes years, and I would need a lawyer, money. I have neither. Benjamin was silent for a moment, thinking. Then another idea came to him, wild and probably crazy, but it might work. You could marry someone else, he said quietly. Rose stared at him. What? If you were married to someone else, Marcus would not have any legal claim on you. The marriage would supersede his. But I am already married. You cannot marry someone when you are already married. Not legally, no. But this is the frontier. Things work different out here. If we went to a small town, found a sympathetic minister or judge, explained the situation, they might be willing to perform a ceremony. It would not be completely legal, not technically, but it would give us a defense if Marcus tried to take you by force. Rose was shaking her head, but Benjamin pressed on. Think about it, Rose. If you were Mrs. Sawyer instead of Mrs. Fairfield, if you were living here as my wife, It would be a lot harder for him to claim you. He would have to prove his marriage was legitimate first, and that would mean going to court, making his case publicly. Do you think Marcus wants his dirty laundry aired in front of everyone? But Benjamin, I cannot ask you to do that, to marry me just to keep me safe. That is not fair to you. You are not asking, Benjamin said. I am offering, and it would not just be to keep you safe. He took a deep breath, knowing he was about to expose his heart in a way he never had before. Rose, these past 2 weeks have been the best of my life. I look forward to seeing you every morning. I count the hours until I can come back to the house and talk to you. When I am with you, I feel like myself in a way I never have before. I do not know if that is love, but it is something powerful, something real. And if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then marrying you would not be a sacrifice. It would be a privilege. Rose's eyes had filled with tears. Benjamin, I do not know what to say. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you are brave and strong and kind. I know you have been hurt, but you have not let it break you. I know you make me want to be a better man. He took her hands. I am not asking you to love me back, Rose. I am just asking you to let me protect you, to give you a life where you do not have to be afraid. Everything else, we can figure out as we go. You really mean it, Rose whispered, searching his face. You would really marry me, knowing I am legally bound to another man, knowing it could bring you nothing but trouble. Yes, Benjamin said simply. I would. I will. Rose was silent for a long moment, and Benjamin held his breath, waiting. Then slowly she nodded. All right, she said softly. Yes, I will marry you, Benjamin Sawyer. The relief that flooded through Benjamin was so intense it almost made him dizzy. He pulled Rose into his arms, holding her close, and she clung to him as if he were a lifeline in a storm. We will leave tomorrow, he said into her hair. Head up to a little town I know near the Arizona border. There is a minister there who owes my family a favor. We will have the ceremony, come back as husband and wife, and let Marcus try to do something about it. What if it does not work? Rose asked, her voice muffled against his chest. What if he finds a way to take me anyway? Then we will fight him every step of the way, Benjamin promised. But Rose, I want you to know something. Even if this does not work, even if we have to run, even if we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders, I will not regret it. Being with you is worth any risk. Rose pulled back to look at him, and Benjamin saw something in her eyes that made his heart skip. It was not just gratitude or relief. It was something warmer, something that looked a lot like the feeling growing in his own chest. I do not deserve you, she said. You deserve better than me, Benjamin countered. But I am going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you anyway. They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, and Benjamin felt as if he were standing on the edge of something momentous. His life was about to change in ways he could not predict. But for the first time since his mother died, he did not feel alone. He felt like he had found something, someone worth fighting for. The next morning, Benjamin and Rose set out before dawn. He told his men they would be gone for a few days and put Tom in charge. Tom gave him a knowing look, but did not ask questions. Jake wished them well with a big grin. Charlie just nodded and said, "About time, boss." They rode north and west, keeping off the main roads. Benjamin did not think Pike and his men would be back so soon, but there was no sense taking chances. The weather had warmed up, and the snow was melting, turning the landscape into a muddy mess. But the skies were clear, and the sun felt good on their faces. They traveled for 2 days, camping at night under the stars. Benjamin gave Rose his bedroll and slept on a blanket by the fire, but he noticed how she watched him, how she seemed to be working up the courage to say something. On the second night, she finally did. "Benjamin," she said as they sat by the fire after dinner, "I need to tell you something." "All right," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "I want you to know that this is not just gratitude. What I am feeling." She looked down at her hands, as if gathering courage. "When you found me in that shack, I thought I was going to die. I had given up. But then you were there, and you took care of me, and you made me feel safe for the first time in years. At first I thought it was just relief, just the natural response to being rescued. But as the days passed, I realized it was more than that." She looked up, meeting his eyes. "I have thought about what you said, about feeling like yourself when you are with me. I feel the same way. For 3 years I have been so focused on survival, on just getting through each day, that I forgot what it felt like to be happy. But These past 2 weeks with you, I have been happy. When I wake up in the morning, I want to see you. When something good happens, you are the first person I want to tell. When I am afraid, just being near you makes me feel braver." Benjamin felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Rose, I am not in love with you," she said, and his heart sank a little. "Not yet. I do not think I am capable of love right now, not after everything Marcus did to me. But I think I could fall in love with you if you give me time. I think I am already halfway there." "I will give you all the time you need," Benjamin said, "and I will wait however long it takes." Rose smiled, and it transformed her face, making her look young and carefree. "I do not think it will take very long." They reached the small town of Junction Creek on the third day. It was barely more than a crossroads, a dozen buildings clustered around a well. But it had a church, and the minister, Reverend Thomas Brennan, was a friend of Benjamin's father. The Reverend was an older man with kind eyes and a gentle manner. He listened to their story without judgment, nodding as Benjamin explained the situation. "That is a terrible thing," he said when Benjamin finished. "A man who beats his wife is no man at all in my book, and you are doing the right thing, helping her." He looked at Rose with compassion. "But you understand that this marriage will not be legal in the eyes of the law, not while your first marriage still stands." "I understand," Rose said, "but it will give us a defense, a way to fight back if my husband tries to take me by force." "It will," the Reverend agreed, "and more importantly, it will be legal in the eyes of God. If you two are committed to each other, if you are making vows in good faith, then I am willing to perform the ceremony. The rest, we leave to the Almighty." They were married that afternoon in the small church, with the Reverend's wife and a traveling merchant as witnesses. Rose wore a simple dress the Reverend's wife lent her, and Benjamin wore his cleanest shirt. There were no flowers, no music, no celebration. Just two people standing before God and making promises to each other. Benjamin felt the weight of those promises as he said his vows, to love, to honor, to protect. He meant every word. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin leaned down and kissed Rose gently, a chaste brush of lips that nonetheless sent electricity shooting through him. Rose's eyes were shining when he pulled back. "Hello, husband," she said softly. "Hello, wife," Benjamin replied, and they both smiled. They spent their wedding night in a small room above the general store, the only lodging available in Junction Creek. It was not fancy, just a bed and a washstand, but it felt like a palace after camping on the ground. They sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly shy with each other, the reality of what they had done sinking in. "I know this marriage is not conventional," Benjamin said carefully, "and I do not expect anything from you that you are not ready to give. We can take things as slow as you need." Rose looked at him with gratitude, and something else, something that made Benjamin's pulse quicken. "You are a good man, Benjamin Sawyer. I am glad I found you. Or, you found me. However that worked." "I am glad too," he said. "More than I can say." They lay down together, fully clothed, on top of the covers. Benjamin held Rose in his arms, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. It was intimate and sweet and perfect, and Benjamin would not have traded it for anything. "Thank you," Rose whispered in the darkness, "for giving me a chance at a new life." "Thank you," Benjamin replied, "for making me believe in something beyond just surviving." They rode back to the ranch 3 days later, taking their time, enjoying the journey. When they finally arrived, Tom and the others greeted them with congratulations. Word of the marriage had somehow gotten back ahead of them, and the ranch hands had done their best to make the house look festive. There were wildflowers in jars on the kitchen table, and a sign over the door that read, "Welcome home, Mrs. Sawyer," in Jake's crude handwriting. Rose laughed and cried at the same time when she saw it. "This is the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me." "You are family now," Tom said gruffly. "We take care of family." The next few weeks were the happiest Benjamin had ever known. He and Rose settled into married life with surprising ease. She took over running the household, cooking and cleaning, and making the house feel like a home for the first time in years. Benjamin went about his work with renewed energy, knowing he had something worth coming home to. They shared a bed now, though they had not yet consummated the marriage. Benjamin did not push, and Rose seemed to appreciate his patience. But slowly, night by night, they grew closer. Chaste kisses became longer, more passionate. Holding hands became embraces. And one night, about a month after their wedding, Rose turned to him in the darkness and said, "I am ready." Benjamin made love to his wife gently, carefully, erasing the memories of rough hands and cruel words with tenderness and devotion. Afterward, Rose cried, but they were good tears, tears of healing and release. She told him she felt like she was finally free, like the last chains binding her to Marcus Fairfield had broken. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I did not think I could love anyone again, but I love you, Benjamin." "I love you too," Benjamin said, his voice thick with emotion. "So much, Rose, so very much." Life was good for the next 2 months. Spring came to New Mexico, bringing warm breezes and green grass. The cattle thrived, the ranch prospered, and Benjamin and Rose grew closer every day. She learned to ride, really ride, and would accompany him on his rounds sometimes. She laughed more, the shadows in her eyes fading a little more each day. But the shadow of Marcus Fairfield still loomed. Benjamin knew it was only a matter of time before something happened. And in early May, it did. A man came to the ranch, not a hired gun this time, but a lawyer from Santa Fe. His name was Harold Whitmore, and he carried papers declaring that Rose was the legal wife of Marcus Fairfield, and that her marriage to Benjamin was invalid. He also had a writ compelling her to return to El Paso to face charges of theft and abandonment. Benjamin read the papers with a sinking heart. "This is not legal," he said. "You cannot compel someone to return to a situation where they are in danger." "That is for a court to decide," Whitmore said smoothly. "My job is simply to serve these papers and inform Mrs. Fairfield that if she does not comply, Mr. Fairfield will pursue the matter through the territorial courts. And I should warn you, Mr. Sawyer, that by harboring her and entering into a fraudulent marriage, you are exposing yourself to legal liability as well." "Get off my property," Benjamin said coldly. "I am going," Whitmore said, "but you should know that Mr. Fairfield is a determined man. He will get his wife back, one way or another. You are only delaying the inevitable." After the lawyer left, Benjamin and Rose held a council of war with Tom, Jake, and Charlie. They needed a plan, a real one, because it was clear that Marcus was not going to give up. "We could run," Rose said. "Head to California or Oregon, somewhere he cannot reach us." "Running will not solve anything," Tom said. "He will just keep looking. Men like that do not stop." "What if we fight him in court?" Jake suggested. "Get our own lawyer, make a case." "With what money?" Benjamin said. "Lawyers are expensive, and we would be fighting a man who can afford the best. It would bankrupt the ranch." They talked in circles for an hour, but no solution presented itself. Finally, Charlie, who had been silent the whole time, spoke up. "Seems to me the problem is Mr. Fairfield himself," he said. "As long as he is alive and wants her back, there is no peace for you two. But if something were to happen to him, well, then the problem goes away." Benjamin stared at the old man. "Are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting?" Charlie shrugged. "I am just saying, men die all the time out here. Accidents, illness, violence. It would be a shame if something unfortunate happened to Mr. Fairfield." "No," Rose said firmly. "I will not have blood on my hands. I will not let you become murderers because of me." "She is right," Benjamin said. "We are not killing anyone. There has to be another way." But as the days passed and no other solution presented itself, Benjamin found himself thinking about Charlie's words. Not about killing Marcus Fairfield himself, but about the broader truth beneath the suggestion. As long as Marcus was alive and free, Rose would never be safe. They could run to the ends of the earth, and he would still find them eventually. What they needed was for Marcus to be discredited, or imprisoned, or otherwise neutralized. But how? The answer came from an unexpected source. One day in late May, a woman showed up at the ranch. She was young, maybe 25, with hard eyes and a determined set to her jaw. Her name was Catherine Miller, and she had a story to tell. "I was Marcus Fairfield's mistress for 2 years, she said bluntly, sitting in Benjamin and Rose's kitchen. "He set me up in a house in El Paso, gave me money, made promises. Then I got pregnant, and he threw me out. Told me if I said anything, he would ruin me." She looked at Rose with sympathy. "I heard he was looking for his wife, heard about how she ran away. I wanted you to know you were not alone. He has hurt other women too." Rose reached across the table and took Catherine's hand. "I am sorry for what he did to you." "I am sorry for what he did to you too," Catherine said. "But I have been thinking. If there are two of us willing to testify against him, maybe there are more. And if we could find them, if we could get them to come forward, maybe we could build a case against him. Not just for how he treated his wife, but for fraud, for abandonment of a child, for all of it. Benjamin leaned forward. You think other women would be willing to talk? I know of at least 3 others, Catherine said, women he charmed and used and threw away. They are afraid of him, but if they knew they were not alone, if they knew there was a chance to make him pay, I think they would do it. Over the next month, Catherine and Rose worked together to find the other women Marcus had hurt. It was not easy. Many were reluctant to come forward, afraid of the scandal, afraid of what Marcus might do. But slowly, patiently, Rose convinced them. She told her own story, shared her own scars, and one by one, the women agreed to help. By the end of June, they had statements from 6 women, all testifying to Marcus Fairfield's pattern of abuse, manipulation, and fraud. They also had evidence that he had fathered at least 3 illegitimate children and refused to support them, which was a crime in territorial law. Benjamin took the evidence to the territorial marshal, a straight-laced man named Sam Garrett, who had a reputation for honesty. Garrett reviewed the statements and agreed to investigate. Within 2 weeks, Marcus Fairfield was arrested in El Paso on multiple charges. The trial took place in Santa Fe in August of 1885. Benjamin and Rose attended, sitting in the back of the courtroom and holding hands as witness after witness took the stand to describe Marcus's cruelty. Rose herself testified, her voice steady and strong as she detailed the abuse she had endured. Marcus's lawyers tried to discredit her, but with so many other women telling similar stories, their efforts fell flat. Marcus Fairfield was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, assault, and child abandonment. He was sentenced to 15 years in the territorial prison. As he was led away in chains, he looked at Rose with pure hatred, but she met his gaze without flinching. You are nothing, she said clearly, and I am free. The legal complications of Rose's situation were resolved shortly afterward. With Marcus in prison, Rose was able to petition for an annulment of their marriage on the grounds of cruelty. The petition was granted, and she was declared legally single. A week later, she and Benjamin were married again, this time in a proper ceremony in Lordsburg with all their friends in attendance. The second ceremony was different from the first, joyful instead of desperate, a celebration instead of a necessity. Rose wore a beautiful white dress that Benjamin bought from a shop in Santa Fe, and she looked radiant as she walked down the aisle of the small church. Benjamin felt his throat tighten with emotion as he said his vows again, making the same promises but with even more conviction now that they knew what they meant. I love you, he said, as he slipped a simple gold band on her finger. Today, tomorrow, and always. I love you too, Rose replied, tears streaming down her face. My husband, my partner, my salvation. They kissed to thunderous applause, and Benjamin felt as if his heart might burst with happiness. After everything they had been through, all the fear and uncertainty and struggle, they had made it. They were together, legally and truly, and nothing could tear them apart. The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered under Benjamin's management, and Rose proved to be a natural at running the household and managing the finances. They became pillars of the community, respected and admired. Benjamin served on the town council, and Rose started a small school for ranch children who lived too far from town to attend regular classes. In the spring of 1886, Rose discovered she was pregnant. Benjamin was terrified and thrilled in equal measure. He had lost his mother young and knew how dangerous childbirth could be. But Rose was strong and healthy, and when their son was born in January of 1887, she came through the delivery beautifully. They named him Thomas, after Tom Murphy, who had become like a father to them both. 3 years later, they had a daughter, whom they named Mary, after Benjamin's mother, and 2 years after that, another son, James. The house that had once felt too big and too empty was now full of laughter and noise and life. Benjamin watched his children grow with a sense of wonder and gratitude. He taught Thomas to ride and rope, took him out on the range, and showed him how to read the land. Rose read to Mary every night, teaching her letters and numbers, instilling in her daughter the love of learning that had sustained her through her darkest days. Little James followed his older siblings everywhere, determined to do everything they did despite being half their size. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, Benjamin and Rose would sit on the porch and watch the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. They would hold hands and talk about their day, about the children, about the ranch, about nothing and everything. "Do you ever think about that night?" Rose asked one evening in the summer of 1892. "The night you found me in the shack?" "All the time," Benjamin admitted. "I thank God for that storm, as strange as that sounds. If it had not hit, if I had made it back to the ranch before it started, I never would have found you." "I was so scared," Rose said softly. "I thought I was going to die alone in that cold, dark place. I had given up on everything, on life, on the possibility of happiness. And then you appeared like an angel, and you saved me." "You saved me too," Benjamin said. "I was just going through the motions before you came along, working, surviving, but not really living. You gave me a reason to live, Rose. You gave me everything." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other then. That is how it should be, I think. Two people who find each other when they need each other most and build a life together." "I love you," Benjamin said, the words as true and powerful as the day he first spoke them. "I love you more than I have words to say." "I love you too," Rose replied. "My cowboy, my husband, my home." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the world in twilight colors, Benjamin thought about the journey they had taken together. From that frozen night in an abandoned shack to this moment of peace and contentment, they had faced down danger, defied the odds, and built something beautiful. Their love had been forged in adversity and tempered by time, and it was stronger than steel. The years continued to roll by, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Thomas grew into a strong, capable young man who took over more and more of the ranch work. Mary became a teacher like her mother, opening her own school in Lordsburg. James followed his father's footsteps, learning the land and the cattle with an instinctive understanding that Benjamin recognized as a gift. Benjamin and Rose grew older together, their hair turning gray, their faces marked by time and weather. But they never stopped holding hands, never stopped sitting on the porch together in the evenings, never stopped looking at each other with the same love that had sustained them through everything. In the spring of 1910, Benjamin fell ill. It was pneumonia, the old killer of the West, and despite Rose's devoted nursing, he grew weaker by the day. On a warm May afternoon, with Rose holding his hand and their children gathered around the bed, Benjamin Sawyer closed his eyes for the last time. "I love you," Rose whispered through her tears. "I will always love you. Wait for me on the other side, and we will sit together and watch the sunset again." Benjamin's lips curved in a faint smile, and then he was gone, slipping away as gently as a breath of wind. Rose mourned deeply, but not despairingly. She had been blessed with 25 years of happiness, 25 years of love, and she carried those memories like treasures. She continued to live on the ranch, surrounded by her children and, eventually, her grandchildren. She told them stories about their grandfather, about the cowboy who had found her, half frozen in an abandoned shack, and warmed her by the fire all night long, about the man who had given her a life worth living. When Rose Fairfield Sawyer died peacefully in her sleep in 1925 at the age of 62, she was laid to rest beside her husband on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. The headstone read simply, "Benjamin and Rose Sawyer, together forever." And in the whisper of the wind through the grass, in the warmth of the sun on the stone, in the enduring legacy of the family they had created, their love lived on, a testament to the power of two souls who found each other in the darkest of times and chose to build a light that would never go out. Their grandchildren would stand on that hill years later, watching the sunset, and they would think of the story of Benjamin and Rose, the cowboy and the woman he saved, the love that had defied the odds and created a dynasty, the romance that had started with a blizzard and a frozen shack and had grown into something that would echo through the generations. It was a love story for the ages, born in the Wild West, tempered by hardship and proven by time, a story of courage, of redemption, of two people who were brave enough to reach for happiness when it seemed impossible. And it all started on that cold February night in 1885, when Benjamin Sawyer pushed open the door of an abandoned shack and found his future huddled in the corner, half frozen, but still fighting to survive. He warmed her by the fire all night long, and in return, she warmed his heart for the rest of his life.